Chapter 7. The Awakening. Mara asked, "Who are the 12? Liana didn't answer right away. She looked past Mara, out the window at nothing in particular. The reflection of morning light painted her hair in gold, her face calm but shadowed by thought. Mara could see the battle happening behind her eyes, the instinct to protect secrets warring, with the guilt of holding them from someone she cared about. "Come on," Mara said, placing both hands on Liana's. Her touch was warm, grounding, familiar in a way that made Liana's breath catch. "We're in this together. Whatever this is, you don't have to carry it alone." Liana's lips parted as if to speak. Her eyes softened, the careful mask she wore in public slipping for just a moment. For a heartbeat, it looked like she might tell her everything: the clans, the ancient bloodlines, the weight of secrets passed down through centuries. Then Mara heard it, a hiss, not the faint whisper she felt before during practice, not the gentle pulse of ki winding through her like breath during Tai Chi. This was sharper, alive, cutting through her skull like a blade dragged across stone. She froze, eyes darting around the cafe. But everything looked normal. The barista was steaming milk. A couple in the corner laughed at something on a phone. An old man read a newspaper by the window. No one else reacted. No one else heard it. Liana's mouth moved, concern flickering across her face, but Mara couldn't hear what she said. The sound had swallowed everything else. The hiss coiled inside her chest like smoke filling a closed room. She gasped, clutching the edge of the table hot enough that her knuckles went white. The hiss grew louder, deeper, like a storm rumbling through her veins, like thunder trapped inside her bones. Her vision blurred at the edges, darkness creeping in. Her pulse roared in her ears until it drowned everything else out: the cafe sounds, Liana's voice, her own thoughts. The walls seemed to bend around her, space warping as if she were underwater, drowning in air. Then she felt it, coiling, twisting, moving beneath her skin like something separate, something other asterisk, alive. It wasn't a noise anymore. It was a presence, massive and ancient and utterly inhuman, stirring inside her bones. Waking up after a long sleep, Mara's eyes unfocused, pupils blown wide, her breath hitched, chest rising and falling in shallow, rapid bursts. She tried to answer Liana, tried to say something, anything, but another hiss slammed into her like thunder splitting the sky. Her whole body trembled, muscles tightening in a single violent spasm that lifted her halfway out of her chair, and for the first time since the alley, since the night everything changed, she understood the sound. It wasn't just noise. It was language, communication, a warning scream directly into her brain. Asterisk dodge. Now. Move that asterisk. There was no time to question it, no time to think or hesitate or wonder why. Her body moved on pure instinct, ki surging through her limbs like lightning through copper wire. Every cell in her body screamed the same command: asterisk, move or die asterisk. She threw herself sideways, grabbing Liana's arm and yanking her down just as, impact, the entire front of the cafe exploded inward in a cascade of glass and twisted steel. A car full-sized sedan, hood crumpled and smoking, headlights shattered, came crashing through the window like a missile launched from hell. The sound was apocalyptic, shattering glass, screaming metal, the thunderous crunch of impact. Tables and chairs flew like toys. The espresso machine tore free from its moorings. The display case full of pastries disintegrated into a cloud of glass shards and flying croissants. The world shattered into 1,000 pieces of noise and light and chaos. At the spot where Mara and Liana had been sitting, where they should have been crushed, broken, killed instantly, was empty. Liana had moved without thinking the moment she'd seen Mara's eyes go wide, the moment she'd felt Mara's heartbeat spike beyond anything remotely human. One instant she'd been sitting across from her, the next she'd thrown herself sideways, following Mara's pull. They hit the ground behind a toppled table as glass rained over them like deadly snow, as Neville shrieked and people screamed and the entire world went insane. Liana's words cut short as she felt something under her hands. Something wrong, something changing. Mara's skin was hot, burning hot, fever bright, and asterisk moving asterisk under her palms like liquid metal trying to escape. Her pulse wasn't a pulse anymore, but a vibration, deep and unearthly, resonating through Liana's hands and up her arms. Mara's spine arched, her mouth open in a sound that wasn't quite a scream, wasn't quite human. Cracks split along her arms, her shoulders, her throat, thin lines of black light glowing beneath the skin like molten veins of obsidian. Liana staggered back, heart hammering. No, Mara, breathe. Just breathe. But Mara wasn't there anymore. Her eyes went blank, consciousness fleeing like birds before a storm. Her pupils narrowed, reshaping, becoming vertical slits that glowed molten gold. The air around her shimmered with heat haze as the hiss became deafening, not from outside, but from asterisk inside asterisk, from Mara herself. Her body convulsed once, twice, 3 times, violent spasms that looked like they should break bones. And then it began. Her skin split, not blood that poured out, but light black and silver and alive, flowing over her in waves that hardened instantly into dark steel scales. Her bones groaned audibly, the sound like ancient trees bending in a hurricane, reshaping, lengthening, breaking and reforming into something never meant for human anatomy. Fingers melted and fused, nails extending into curved talons that scored the floor. Her spine tore through the back of her shirt with wet tearing sounds, each vertebra expanding and stretching until it formed the base of something vast and serpentine. The transformation was not graceful, it was not beautiful or mystical or anything like the movies. It was violent and primal and the sound of evolution screaming itself into existence. Force and change through flesh that fought every second of it. Tables were crushed beneath her expanding form, wood splintering like matchsticks. Scales the color of midnight rippled outward in waves, each one reflecting the cafe's flickering emergency lights like shards of black mirror. A face elongated, jaw splitting wider and wider with sounds like wet fabric tearing. Teeth erupted, not growing but asterisk appearing asterisk. Obsidian daggers that caught the light and seemed to drink it in. People were screaming now, running, trampling over each other to get to the back exit. Someone was crying. Someone else was filming on their phone. Hands shaking so badly the video would be useless. In seconds, maybe 10, maybe 15, where Mara had been kneeling, a massive serpent coil, 20 feet long at least, maybe more, its body as thick as a telephone pole, black steel scales glinted like blades, each one perfectly formed, overlapping like armor designed by something that understood war on an instinctual level. Eyes burning with molten gold fire, pupils thin as knife butts, stared out at a world that had suddenly become prey. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and scorched earth and something else, something ancient and reptilian that made every mammal brain in the buffet scream asterisk predator. Run, hide asterisk. The serpent's massive head lowered, moving with unsettling fluidity for something so large. It positioned itself protectively around Liana, body curling in a tight spiral that enclosed her like living armor, like a dragon guarding treasure. Then, from the street beyond the ruined cafe front, came another sound, grinding metal, heavy, furious footsteps that shook the ground, a roar that rattled windows 3 blocks away. Through the haze of smoke and shattered glass and settling dust, a figure emerged from the crater the car had left in the street, towering, broad-shouldered, easily 8 feet tall, a minotaur. But not the white bull myths of ancient Greece. This was something darker, more primal. Its muscles glowed faintly red beneath torn flesh, veins pulsing with what looked like molten lava flowing beneath the skin. The creature's eyes burned with rage and something else, intelligence, cruel and ancient. Its breath was hot enough to warp the air, steam rising from its nostrils. With each exhale, massive horns, black as obsidian and wickedly curved, crowned its head. Each one was as long as Mara's arm had been, tapering to points that could punch through steel. It had thrown the car, and now it was looking for who had dodged it, head swinging back and forth, nostrils flaring as it smelled for prey. The serpent's head turned toward the beast. For a long crystalline moment, the 2 titans locked eyes across the ruined cafe. Predator recognizing predator, ancient power meeting ancient power. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension, with the weight of imminent violence. Then the serpent's pupils contracted to pinpoints. A hiss returned louder than before, furious, live with rage and challenge. The serpent uncoiled like a spring, releasing. The entire front of the cafe, what was left of it, collapsed as the massive form surged forward. Its body moved with terrifying, impossible grace for something so large. Fluid like water, deadly like a whip made of steel. The ground shook with each movement, scales tearing deep gouges into the asphalt like claws through paper. Debris scattered, chairs, tables, chunks of wall thrown aside by the serpent's bulk. It burst into the street with a sound like a building falling, and the real fight began. Liana scrambled to her feet amid the wreckage, glass crunching under her shoes. Every instinct she had ever listened drilled into her since childhood, every drop of Dragon Clan blood in her veins screamed at her to help, to do something. Her hands were already shifting without conscious thought, bones beginning to reshape under her skin. She took one step toward the street, power rising. A gentle hand settled on her shoulder. She froze. The touch was light, but carried absolute authority, the kind of weight that made disobedience feel impossible. Slowly, like turning to face a loaded gun, She turned her head. Master Li stood beside her amid the chaos and ruin. The old man who'd been teaching Tai Chi in the park, who'd seemed like nothing more than a harmless elderly instructor, now radiated something else entirely. An ancient, unshakable presence that made the air around him feel heavier, denser, like gravity worked differently in his immediate vicinity. His eyes were calm, his expression hadn't changed, but something had shifted, something that made Liana's power recoil instinctively, recognizing a predator so far above her own weight class that attacking would be suicide. "No," he said quietly, voice cutting through the chaos with perfect clarity. "This is her battle." Liana's eyes went wide, her breath caught. Every lesson about the clans, every warning whispered by her elders of the great powers that walked the world, every half-myth she dismissed as exaggeration, all of it came flooding back. "You're the leader of the Snake Clan," Liu finished, his tone unchanged, as casual as if he were discussing the weather. "Yes." The words hit like a physical blow. The Snake Clan one of the three oldest, the most feared, the ones even Dragon Clan elders spoke about in hushed tones, the ones who'd gone to war with entire bloodlines and emerged victorious despite impossible odds. And he'd been standing in a park, teaching Mara Tai Chi, watching her develop a form that should have been impossible for someone not born to the bloodline. "That beast is nothing to either of us," Liu continued, his gaze never leaving the battle unfolding in the street. His voice carried absolute certainty, the kind that came from experience, from having faced down worse and survived. "You want to help her? You want to protect her?" He glanced at Liana, and for just a moment his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her feel like an insect under a magnifying glass. "Then you must let her become stronger. This fight is hers, not yours. Not mine. Liana's fists clenched at her sides. "She could die up there." "She could," Liu agreed, turning back to watch. "But she won't." The Minotaur bellowed a sound that was half raw, half scream, primal and furious. Steam exploded from its nostrils in great billowing clouds. It reached down and tore a metal streetlight pole from its concrete foundation like pulling a weed from soft earth. The pole bent in its grip, metal groaning, and the Minotaur swung it like a club, roaring a challenge that rattled windows for blocks, that set off car alarms in a cascading wave of wailing sirens. The serpent struck first, faster than anything that size had a right to be, faster than thought, faster than reaction. It launched itself forward. Its jaws snapped toward the Minotaur's weapon arm, a blur of black scales and white teeth. The sound of impact was like thunder, like two cars colliding at highway speeds. Metal met scale met bone with a crack that echoed off buildings. Sparks flew. The improvised club bent further, stressed beyond its limits. Nearby car windows exploded from the shockwave, glass raining down like hail. Trash cans rolled into the street, contents spilling. A fire hydrant somewhere started spraying water skyward. The Minotaur staggered back, massive hooves gouging the asphalt, muscles straining as it gripped its weapon tighter. For just a moment, surprise flickered across its bestial features. This prey fought back. The serpent twisted mid-air with impossible agility, its body a blur of coiling black motion. It slammed into the Minotaur's chest with the force of a wrecking ball, all that mass and momentum concentrated into a single point. The Minotaur was thrown backward, was leaving the ground entirely. It crashed through a pod bus it, knocked into it, metal folding like aluminum foil, windows exploding, the entire vehicle crumpling around the beast's body before it tumbled out the other side. The ground trembled, car alarms wailed louder, people screamed from windows and doorways, faces pressed to glass, phones out, recording everything. Liana stood rigid at the cafe's ruins, every muscle in her body vibrating with the need to act, to intervene, to help. Her hands trembled. She could feel her power pushing at her control, wanting to surge forward, wanting to reshape her body into something that could fight, that could make a difference. But Liu's hand remained on her shoulder, not restraining, not forcing, just present. A reminder. "What was it you wanted earlier?" Liu asked, his voice conversational despite the apocalyptic violence unfolding 50 feet away, as if they were still in the park, as if a giant serpent wasn't fighting a demon bull in the middle of the street. "We both know it wasn't about Tai Chi." Liana blinked, the question so absurdly normal that it tore her focus from the battle for just a moment. She forced herself to breathe, to think, to remember why she'd come to the park in the first place. Before everything went to hell, I wanted information. On Vlad. Liu's eyebrows rose slightly, interest flickering across his weathered features. He rubbed his chin, thoughtful. Blah, that was a long time ago, 600 years, if I recall correctly. Yes, Iana said, not taking her eyes off the serpent. The beast was circling now, low to the ground, stairs scraping against asphalt with sounds like swords being sharpened. The lad was of the clan of the dragon. Like me, I've heard the stories every youngling in my clan has. We're taught about it as a lesson, when we're children, about pride, about not being arrogant, about respecting power even when it seems small. She hesitated, watching as the Minotaur rose from the wreckage of the bus, blood dripping from its jaw but eyes still burning with rage. The stories always come from our side, our perspective, our propaganda, maybe. I want to know what the Snake Clan's version of events is, what really happened. The Minotaur was on its feet again, chest heaving, one arm hanging slightly wrong but still functional. It spat blood onto the pavement, thick and dark and steaming where it hit, and lowered its head. Its horns began to glow, starting from the base and spreading to the tips, not metaphorically glowing, actually glowing red hot, then orange, then starting toward white hot at the very points. The air around them shimmered with heat distortion. The creature stamped one hoof, then another, pawing the ground like a bull about to charge. The serpent's response was a hiss that made windows 3 blocks away crack a sound so low and so loud it was felt more than heard. A vibration in the chest and bones. They charged simultaneously. The Minotaur came in low, horns leading, every ounce of its considerable mass behind the attack. The serpent reared up, body coiling like a spring, then launched itself forward in a strike that would have decapitated a building. They met in the middle of the street with an impact that cracked the pavement in a spiderweb pattern 20 feet wide. The serpent's jaws clamped onto the Minotaur's shoulder, fangs each one as long as a knife blade sinking deep into muscle and flesh. The Minotaur roared, a sound of pure agony, but didn't fall. Its superheated horns drove upward, punching into the serpent's side, through scales that should have been impenetrable. Both creatures screamed. Black blood sprayed from the serpent's wound, hissing and smoking where it hit the ground, eating into the asphalt like acid. The Minotaur's blood was thicker, darker, steaming in the cool morning air. They broke apart, both wounded, both furious. The serpent coiled tighter, a section of its side darkened and dripping, scales cracked and bent. But its eyes burned brighter, and its hiss grew louder, more insistent. The Minotaur's shoulder was a ruin of torn flesh, but its muscles still worked, veins pulsing with that internal fire that kept it moving despite injuries that should have been crippling. Leon nodded slowly at Liana's words, watching the combatants circle each other. Your clan record should have the full account written down somewhere, if you look carefully enough. Dig through the archives. Maybe, Iana said, frustration bleeding into her voice. But records are dry, names and dates and casualty lists. I want to hear the Snake Clan's side of the story, what it meant, why it happened. A faint smile touched Lee's lips, so subtle it might have been imagined. I may not remember everything my elders passed down. It was a long time ago, and all traditions can shift over centuries. He paused as the Minotaur grabbed a chunk of broken concrete the size of a refrigerator and hurled it like a baseball. The serpent's tail whipped around and shattered it mid-flight, debris raining down in 100 pieces. But I'll tell you what my clan recalls. He was quiet for a moment, organizing thoughts or memories. Iana couldn't tell which. How many of each clan? She asked, unable to help herself. In the battle, how many dragons against how many snakes? Liu watched the fight. The serpent had gotten inside the Minotaur's guard now, body wrapping around the beast's torso, coils tightening like steel cables. The Minotaur thrashed, trying to break free. Superheated skin burning the serpent's scales where they touched. Smoke rose from both combatants. I believe Lee said slowly, carefully, it was 100 to 1, not including the 5 who had achieved dragon form and fled himself, who had reached the flaming dragon form. Diana's head snapped toward him, eyes wide with shock. Wait, there's a form asterisk beyond asterisk the dragon. How do you? She cut herself off, mind racing. Her clan had legends, whispers of transformations beyond even their greatest masters, but nothing concrete. Nothing confirmed. How does the Snake Clan know about it? Liu's expression remained placid, unreadable. Do you think the Snake Clan would not recognize the style of a true master when we see one? We are among the 3 oldest clans, after all. He glanced at her, and something ancient moved behind his eyes, something that made Liana instinctively take half a step back. And I am the last master of mine. An elemental dragon, Iana breathed, turning back to watch the fight as understanding dawned. That's just legend in my clan. a myth we tell younglings to inspire them to train harder. You have to master the dragon form completely first, perfect it in every way, and even then the transformation might not come. Even then you might not survive the attempt. She shook her head slowly. My clan hasn't produced one in over 300 years. Maybe longer. They are exceedingly rarely, you agree, is toned the professor discussing history. The records my elders shared suggest Vlad's flames burn as bright as the sun itself, that he could melt stone with his breath, that his very presence warped the air with heat. There was a long silence, broken only by the sounds of battle, the crunch of breaking concrete, bestial roars, the scrape of scales on stone, the wet sounds of tearing flesh. The serpent had its jaws clamped around the Minotaur's throat now, squeezing, crushing, but the beast's horns were buried in the serpent's flank, burning, digging deeper. So Liana said quietly, almost afraid to ask, how many masters were there of the Snake clan? At that time, how many fought? Liu was silent for a moment. That stretched too long. Then softly, I'm sorry, but I don't recall the exact number. The old traditions don't specify. You would have to check the records. He paused. If any records from that time still exist. Something in his tone made Liana look at him sharply, but his expression gave nothing away, serene as a still pond. The Minotaur was bleeding heavily now, one arm hanging useless, torn nearly to the bone. Its breath came in ragged gasps, steam billowing from its nostrils with each exhale, but it wasn't finished. Beasts like this didn't understand surrender, didn't understand retreat. It charged forward with the last of its strength, horns still clawing, still superheated despite everything aimed at the serpent's exposed flank. At the section already torn and bleeding, the serpent twisted, but not fast enough, couldn't dodge completely. The horns pierced through scales, sinking deep into flesh beneath. The serpent's scream was inhuman, a sound of pure agony that made windows crack for blocks, that set off every car alarm in a 3-block radius, that sent birds exploding from rooftops in panicked clouds. The serpent's body convulsed, muscles spasming from shock and pain. But even wounded asterisk, especially asterisk wounded, the serpent was lethal. Its massive head whipped around faster than the eye could follow. Its jaws opened impossibly wide, seeming to unhinge like a snake should, revealing rows upon rows of dagger teeth that caught the morning light and reflected it back darker somehow, as if the teeth themselves drained illumination. It struck, fangs sank into the Minotaur's neck, punching through muscle and flesh, finding the great vessels beneath. The beast's eyes went wide. It tried to pull away, massive hands grabbing at the serpent's head, trying to pry the jaws open, but the serpent's coils wrapped around it again, tighter this time, crushing, constricting. Ribs cracked with sounds like gunshots. The Minotaur's hands scrabbled uselessly against scales harder than steel. Its glowing eyes began to dim. Its struggles grew weaker. The light in its horns flickered and died. With a final, terrible twist of its head, the serpent's jaws closed the Minotaur went limp, massive body sagging in the serpent's grip. For a moment, the street was silent except for the serpent's ragged, gasping breaths. Black blood pooled beneath both creatures, mixing on the checkered pavement, spreading in slow rivulets toward the gutters. The serpent's scales were cracked and smoking, gouges visible along its side, where the horns had torn through. Its breathing was labored, each exhale a wheeze. Slowly, almost reluctantly, the serpent released its grip. The Minotaur's body slumped to the ground, lifeless, steam still rising from its cooling flesh. The serpent swayed, exhausted beyond measure. Its golden eyes flickered, the light within them dimming like candles in a strong wind. The hiss that had filled the air faded to a whisper, then to nothing. Its massive body trembled. Scales began to lose their luster, their edge. Then, slowly, the transformation reversed. But Liu moved before Liana could react, before she even registered that he'd decided to move. One moment he was beside her at the cafe's ruins. The next he was in the street, crossing 50 feet of distance in the time it took to blink, moving with impossible speed for someone his age, for someone any asterisk age, his feet barely seeming to touch the ground. He reached the serpent just as its form began to collapse inward, just as scales dissolved into light and flesh began to reshape itself back into something human-sized. Where the massive creature had been, Mara lay curled on the pavement, naked, bleeding, unconscious. Her skin was pale as paper, covered in bruises that were already turning purple-black. Burns marked her side, angry and red and blistered. Deep gashes mashed exactly where the Minotaur's horns had pierced the serpent, still losing blood that was distinctly, disturbingly human. Liu shrugged off his coat in one smooth motion and draped it over her, covering her completely, wrapping her like a child just as the first phone cameras started to swing toward them. just as people began to emerge from buildings and cars. Iana was there a heartbeat later, dropping to her knees beside Mara. "Is she alive?" Liu said quietly, his fingers finding the pulse in Mara's neck. "Weak, Freddy, too fast. Barely. We need to move her, now, before—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Behind them, sirens wailed, getting closer. People shouted. More phones came out, more cameras, more witnesses trying to capture what had happened, trying to understand what they'd just seen. Liana scooped Mara into her arms as if she weighed nothing. Liu's coat wrapped around her like a shroud, covering her face, her identity. Liu positioned himself to block the view of anyone filming, his body language casual, his expression serene, as if this were all perfectly normal. "This way," he said, gesturing toward a narrow alley between buildings. They disappeared into the shadows just as the first police car rounded the corner, lights flashing, siren wailing. Behind them, the street was a war zone, shattered glass everywhere, cratered pavement, the burnt, broken corpse of a minotaur slowly cooling in the morning sun. Dozens of witnesses, hundreds of phone videos, but the girl who'd become a monster, the woman who'd fought and killed and nearly died, she was already gone.